Pressure just shoots through the roof when you do that.
Of course.
Oh! There you go! A sneak attack! There you go. Catch me off guard. Woo!
Right. Okay, that was really a nice dance, Timothy. Thank you for starting the Sunday morning with
You
such a
always
great.
try and catch me off guard.
Oh, do I? I had no
Yes.
idea. Yes. Okay. Well, you do it pretty well with all these, off guard moments and everything. So thanks a lot for that, for always being ready for starting the podcast. This is what? This is April the 14th today, the morning of April the 14th in Tokyo. And we have just launched the 166th episode of Japanese Politics One-on-One on Japan Expert Insights with Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Square, the consultancy
Yay.
firm in downtown Tokyo. Yay. Okay. Not that much enthusiasm there. What's going on, Timothy?
Hi, hi, Maya. I am reporting live from downtown Hota, the port of Hota, where many sailing vessels and a couple of power boats show up. It's a little bit quiet right now because it's only 8:10, and I think everybody else is just kind of being quiet so that they can listen to the show. It is possible that we get interrupted from time to time with maybe motorcycles that come on Sundays to tour the Chiba Peninsula, or to other sailors or boats that just start their engine because they want to disturb us. So it'll be a little bit of rock and roll today.
Okay. Oh, I was not prepared for that, but maybe that's, it goes with the territory anyway. So hopefully the microphone you have on your collar will do its
Yep,
magic.
I hope so. It was a great idea to get this microphone, by the way. Um, so
Okay.
we're So Maya, let's get started with the show. 166 episodes straight
Mhm.
every Sunday. God damn it, how did you achieve that? But it's going strong, and the momentum for people who are listening and interested in Japanese politics just continues to grow. It is so massive and it is so intense that just one briefing this last week on Sunday wasn't enough, since Mr. Kishida was in Washington, D.C. on a quasi-state visit that's called a state visit to Washington, D.C. A lot going on there. So Dan Harada and I had another briefing on Friday afternoon. I don't know if you caught it. Maya, we recorded that. You're polishing it up. You're going to upload it again on YouTube?
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm sorry, I cannot get myself on screen here. My mouse is refusing to collaborate. But yes, I'm taking this on screen on Monday, so the link will be promoted out there, and all will be fine. Everybody who missed it on LinkedIn will be able to. Oh, I found the way. Okay,
Oh, there
to
we
see.
go.
Yes, to watch it on YouTube. So just stay put, and we'll let you know when we are ready with it.
So the title of that briefing was "Do or Die: Will Kishida Close Down the House?" And the
Mhm.
reason why it was that title was because the prime minister is at a critical point right now, as everyone knows if you've been following, even if you haven't been following our briefings. But I think you're interested enough in Japanese politics to know that there was a kickback scandal, and the prime minister, just on the cusp of leaving for Washington, D.C., finally meted out punishments. He punished 39 members of his own party, not anybody in his own faction, including himself, but about all of them were, not all of them, but most of them were either from the former Abe faction or from the former Nikai faction. Not everybody was fingered. A lot of people got off. There were more than 90 members of the LDP who were implicated and actually admitted receiving kickbacks in the various schemes that were kind of replicated throughout the various political factions that make up the LDP. Not all of them. 4 of them were heavily involved. There were 2 that weren't really involved in the kickback scandal. But the most heavily involved, the initiator of it, was the Abe faction, and then it trickled out to the others because they heard that this tactic was this technique was being used, and people were collecting money, and people who were in the faction found another reason to be tight with the faction and contribute a little bit more. So that is the end of it as far as the prime minister is concerned. He cleaned the house and went to Washington, D.C. after listening to this podcast last Sunday. He left on Monday. He arrived on Monday, since we're not on a flat earth anymore. But he arrived on Monday. He met with U.S. Japan business leaders. Maya, you're washing your cat again?
Well, not as much as you're doing that to the hogs there.
The hawks. The hawks are just massive here, and they're big.
Right.
I'm not going to watch them though. But he had business meetings with and a lot of just agreements. More than 40 agreements were signed while he was in Washington, D.C. That's a big deal. So it was the culmination of a lot of work that was being put together by a lot of people, including the 500 plus employees of the cabinet office. He met with military leaders, with the United States, Australia, Great Britain, the Philippines. I mean, it was a massive 1 week. He was there for the entire week. Not everything was with the business leaders. We had the state dinner on Wednesday night, and then the speech to the Joint Congress on Tuesday. That was reported by Dan and I on Friday. And just a tremendous amount is coming out of that. And from the documents and from the speech, he made a great speech, by the way. Excuse me. And he spoke in English. And I thought that was a great thing for him to do. His English was well presented. I thought it was well delivered. It was interesting. It was funny at times. And I think he set a different tone than that set by former Prime Minister Abe when he visited with Obama about 12 years ago. So the kind of tone was set there, but the whole purpose of having this state visit has been orchestrated for many, many months. The Prime Minister knew that he was going to be in trouble at about this time. He actually hoped that the state visit would be earlier, maybe in March, but it fell in April. Excuse me. In April, he's got a busy schedule now. He comes back tomorrow. That's the 15th. I'm sorry, he's back today. The 15th, the 16th is the last day that candidates can claim their candidacy for the 3 by-elections. And this is a critical turning point for the Prime Minister. And the reason for the state visit and all the pomp and circumstance and all of the agreements and everything going on there is because the Prime Minister desperately needs to have wind in his sails in order to lift up his popularity. His popularity and that of the cabinet is just at the lowest point. It hasn't been lower than it is right now since 1990. That's a long time ago. And he wants to remain Prime Minister. His term of office, as you know, ends in September. His term of office as president of the LDP, not as Prime Minister, but as president of the LDP. In typical Japanese political fashion, the president of the LDP, since it's the largest political party, becomes, as through acclamation of all of the members of the Diet, since the LDP holds the majority of the votes, becomes the Prime Minister. When he is not the president of the LDP, it doesn't mean that he's not Prime Minister anymore, but it could create a situation where it's just not very viable for him. Other contenders can come up. And the contenders haven't really shown their faces yet. There are a couple of people that people talk about as a potential contender, but depending on who you talk to, it's some of them are not really that serious. So the Prime Minister has this big event in Washington, D.C. He visited the Toyota manufacturing plant in North Carolina, and then nearby a Honda jet manufacturing. Honda is into jets, passenger jets, small jets, excuse me. And so he made a visit there and departed the United States on Friday. Since you lose a day, you get back on fly maybe 12 hours and then get back into Tokyo. You've lost a day that you gained, and he's back in town in time to watch this show, like you. Thank you very much. So the critical element now is the by-election. There are 3 seats that are open. All 3 seats were dominated by the LDP, and all 3 seats were vacated by LDP members under a certain color. One was by death. That was by Mr. Hosoda. He unfortunately died in office. He was the Speaker of the House until just very recently. Very prominent. He had probably been in the Diet 14 terms. He was the leader of the Abe faction during the entire period that Mr. Abe was prime minister. So a lot of the guilty fingers pointing at all of the people who were receiving kickbacks, nobody touched him. Even when they were doing the investigation, they said just the members, but not the speaker. So they left him off. They left him off of any investigation. He died shortly thereafter. Excuse me. After the scandal began to break, and so his seat in Shimane is open. You would think that for a prominent politician in the leader of the Abe faction was called the Hosoda faction at that time, then he became Speaker of the House, that he would have a rock solid position in his election district, and that doesn't turn out to be the case. The other 2, one is in Tokyo. It's called Tokyo 15. It's one of 32 districts in Tokyo that has a seat for the lower house. Tokyo 15 was held by an LDP politician who was implicated in electing the she's not a governor, the Kucho, the leader of the prefectural assembly in Kotoku. And a little bit of money was spread around. He was implicated in that. She launched a YouTube video. You might have remembered us talking about that, which skirted the campaign finance laws. And he was found guilty of that. And as a consequence of that, he had to turn in his badge. He had to resign from the Diet, an LDP member. The third one is in Nagasaki, also an LDP stronghold. The member there was implicated in bribery. He resigned. So in all 3 of these, there's a lot of kind of bad things with regard to the LDP going on. And with regard to the one that the LDP is potentially strongest in, the former holder, Mr. Hosoda, had been implicated not just in the kickback scandal, but also he was up to his neck in the Unification Church. So the Abe faction was very, very instrumental in helping the Unification Church, and that came out in the wash maybe this time last year. That case still goes on. So you've got 3 elections that are going to start on the 16th. The 16th means the candidates nominate, or the candidates come out of the open and they put their name down, they pay their campaign fee, and the 10-day election period starts. It ends on the 28th. It looks like the LDP is not even going to run a candidate in Nagasaki or in Tokyo 15. They just don't have the confidence that they can win with all of the negatives that are going on there. The only place that they're going to run a candidate, apparently, is in Shimane. And that's going to be a very tough race. So the problem with the prime minister right now is that he's the leader of the LDP. They have a by-election that was 3 seats held by the LDP, and the LDP loses all 3 seats. People are going to blame the prime minister for not showing up enough, for having leadership over a disintegrating political party, and he's going to be blamed for that. So the option for the prime minister is to, and we've been watching this very carefully, you should be too, the option for the prime minister is to close down the House during this campaign period. If the campaign starts on the 17th, and all of the things, the flowery words, the slapping on the back with President Joe Biden begins to take hold, and there's an upswelling of appreciation for what the prime minister has done for Japan, and he's put us back in the on the front page, and we have this global alliance, and people are admiring us. Um, we want to vote more kindly towards the LDP. That's only going to be evaluated in one of the three districts. So they've already conceded on two of those. So it doesn't look particularly good. On the other hand, if he decides to close down the House sometime between that campaign period, that 10-day campaign period, the entire lower house goes up for election. So those three seats, the by-election disappears. It's melded into the entire lower house election, and everybody goes up for election. He has 40 days to call that election. So when he closes down the house, he must ask for the emperor's permission, by the way, which is almost always granted. And from that point on, he has 40 days to call an election, the 10-day election for the lower house members. And that election obviously has to end on a Sunday for voting purposes. So he doesn't have a whole lot of flexibility, and it's a huge gamble for him. He's going to lose those three seats, throw those away, have 40 more days where you can still be prime minister, where you're still working on an election. You can still maybe build some sort of a strong storyline where people are going to vote more prominently for the LDP, or at least not as negatively as most pundits believe they will be voting. And it's a tough gamble. So it really dictates, excuse me, where the prime minister will be during the rest of the session. So that we are in the current diet session, 160 days. It ends on June 23rd. It can be extended, but I doubt it will be. There's too much politics going on right now about the LDP, about the prime minister, about his relationship with Mr. Aso. We can get into that into the Q&A period, but there's a lot of real delicate timing going on. So I encourage everybody to continue to watch the news, continue to stay tuned. Here we'll report to you weekly, and stay tuned, because it looks like there's going to be an awful lot going on in the next couple of days. But I would like to get into a little bit about what the prime minister did while he was in Washington, D.C. He and Mr. Kishida, Mr. Biden, really seemed to hit it off, at least for the press, at least for photographic purposes. The state dinner was well received and highly attended by very big wigs. A lot of Japan hands in the audience too. You can see the invitation list. But the prime minister and Mr. Biden were all talking about a new era of an alliance between Japan and the United States, and they've gone from this this relationship of the best partnership in the world. They're going beyond that now to military alliances, and this heretofore it's been mostly kind of things dictated by the United States, guiding things, building this alliance of like-minded countries, and we're still kind of in that era. But it looks like more significantly, Japan is building and the United States is building a lattice work of these relationships. So it's not just the United States kind of controlling and dictating and pushing things around and deciding from Washington, D.C., but it's like a coalition of different countries binding together, each playing their own role. And so there you can see Japan being involved or invited into Pillar 2 of the Australia, UK, American military alliance that is building very strong. And also the advanced jet fighters, Italy, Britain, and Japan, building that and getting approval from the Diet for building that, or at least the first year's budget of that. But there's so much going on, not only between the United States and Japan and the UK and Italy, but also the Philippines. This is the first time that there was a trilateral meeting between the United States, Japan, and the Philippines, and it occurred while the Prime Minister was in Washington, D.C. It's a big deal. The Philippines is really beginning to emerge as a critical flashpoint in this kind of cat and mouse game that's going on with China, and they're stretching out their exclusive economic zone. There's a lot going on there, and it seems like the rubbing point is in the Philippines and the fishing shoals. There's been some recent development there. But the other thing that the United States and Japan agreed on among the 60 or so agreements was that they're going to move their command and control headquarters from Hawaii to Japan to integrate more closely command and control with Japan and the United States. That's the self-defense forces, ground, sea, and air. And there will be a four-star general that will be situated in Japan, probably in Tokyo. And this is the first time that a four-star general has been assigned. That means he lives here, he and his family and the dog, and he's stationed here for a tour of duty. So this is a very big deal. There's a lot of controversy going on in the Diet right now that Japanese soldiers will be under control or under command of U.S. forces, that sort of thing. So this discussion is going on, but I think this is so much bigger, it's so much greater, and it's all being revealed as a consequence of this Biden Kishida visit just this last week. So there's this fear of Mr. Trump coming up and kicking Biden out of the White House and things being turned upside down. So that is being, highlighted too in the press that, the Biden Kishida relationship is strong and Japan is coming back and it all depends on Joe Biden. So, this other guy, let's not even talk about him. So there's a little bit of that going on too. And you'll be seeing more and more of that. Some of the issues of greater importance to the United States and Japan in these meetings was the higher tech kind of components like AI, cybersecurity, hypersonic missiles, hypersonic missile testing, and semiconductors. Semiconductors are getting a big push just not only by the United States in subsidizing TSMC, but also Japan entering new agreements. TSMC, as we reported 2 weeks ago, is building a second plant in Kumamoto. Microsoft came in with something like $1 billion investment for data centers here in Japan. That was announced just before the president or the prime minister left. And it's just really a rich mix of things that are going on. And I think probably it should be worrisome for China for this kind of a development to be made up in the strength of this lattice work of relationships. It's not just the United States. Everybody's pulling their own weight and taking on different roles. And that's got to be something that you would take real issue with if you were in China's position. So I think it's a very clever move. And hopefully it builds a reasonable enough threat where China doesn't move on Taiwan, which would be just a disaster. In the meantime, the yen hit 153.28. It's sitting at 153.328 dollars to the yen today. It closed on Friday at that point. It just broached 153 just this last week. It was very volatile. The Bank of Japan Governor Ueda is concerned about that. There is a possibility for the Bank of Japan intervening and buying yen so that it supports that. The last time they did that, they spent billions of dollars to support it. There is some suggestion that they have already done that somewhat surreptitiously, quietly, to keep that tap that down. But I think there's also a growing thought that we just have to take the hit. The dollar is going to be stronger and the yen is going to be weaker. We've got to kind of release this to let it find its own level. And it's not going to be 153. It's going to shoot up. It's going to continue to diminish. The value of the yen is going to continue to diminish. And I think no amount of intervention by the Japanese finance or the Bank of Japan or the Ministry of Finance is going to stem that. I think it's more of a central, a structural issue that the Japanese government needs to take issue with. So it creates different problems because Japan needs to pay for things. The Japanese bond market, dominated by the Bank of Japan purchasing bonds to support it. They just passed the budget, the second largest budget in post-war Japanese history. More than 50% of that is being paid for by the Japanese government purchasing these bonds that are being issued to pay for it. So it's a real cat and mouse game. And so I think that's another reason why the Biden Kishida visit was so important, that they've made some agreements there. They've made some decisions about the Japanese economy and about trade and investment. I think you're going to start seeing a whole lot of things coming out of that. GG Press, you know, the GG Press, of all the press reports, dislikes the prime minister the most. They put the approval rating of the prime minister at 16.6%, the approval rating of the cabinet, not of him personally. I think if there was a poll done on him personally, it would be lower than 16.6%. This just came out on Friday. So it does contain some of the responses where people would say, yes, I admire the prime minister for going to Washington, D.C. He's doing a great job, but not quite. I think you need a couple of weeks for this to really filter down and for people to absorb it and then come to their own conclusions. They could say it's just a shell game, it's just smoke and mirrors. He still stinks. I don't forgive him for what he did with the kickback scandal. He only punished 39 of the 90 people who were guilty. He didn't take any blame himself. Nobody in his faction took any kind of repercussions as a consequence. The people that should have gotten it, some of the people in the Nikkei faction in particular, should have gotten nailed, and they didn't. He gave them a pass, and it's just politics as usual. So we need to wait and see that. But most of the people said that the prime minister was just too lenient, and as a consequence of that, the approval rating for the cabinet and for the LDP as a whole also has diminished. So, as I said earlier, this approval rating for the Japanese cabinet, for the prime minister's cabinet that he constructed, has not been lower than when it was in 2012. So that was quite a ways ago. One of the other issues that the public that they telephoned and had this survey with, people were curious about what happened with Mr. Mori. Mr. Mori Yoshiro was the prime minister. He concocted this idea of the kickback scandal. He was leader of the Abe faction until 2022. I'm sorry. When was his? It was 20, 2012, I think. Um, and he was the one that was I guess you could say, the brainchild of this. And he hasn't been investigated. He hasn't been called on. He's no longer a member of the parliament. But people are very curious about, how did this thing happen? And when Mr. Abe was alive, he said, I want this kickback technique to be diminished. I don't want to do it anymore. I think it's too dangerous. I think there's too much heat on me as prime minister. Let's stop it. And it stopped. He was assassinated a couple of months later, and then the group of four, or the group of six at that point in time, came up and said we should restart that again. And people are curious, when did that happen, and who was at fault for kind of guiding that? So when the punishments were meted out, there were two people in particular, Mr. Seko and Mr. Shionoya. He was the Secretary General of the LDP during this critical period of time. They were both asked to leave. So the most stringent reprimand that was figured out, there are about 8 different levels. The most stringent one is, you are out of the LDP. We're kicking you out. And nobody received that punishment. But 2 people received the second level of punishment, which was, you should resign. If you take it upon yourself to resign from the LDP, we will accept your resignation. Mr. Seko, who was the Secretary General of the Upper House, he's the kingpin of the Upper House within the Abe faction. Very, very prominent, very powerful guy, young, still young. And he accepted it, and he says, I resigned from the LDP. The other individual, Mr. Shionoya, decided, I'm going to challenge it. And he wagged a finger. He was supposed to respond by Friday. So it's been a week. The prime minister meted out the reprimands. Then he left for Washington, D.C., with instructions for those people to respond to the reprimand by Friday, which was 2 days ago. And Mr. Shionoya responded, and he says, I reject this punishment that has been meted out. I want to know what happened with Mr. Kishida and how come he escaped. And I think the investigation should be reinitiated with regard to the punishment that I received. So the LDP will review that. They take 2 days to review it, and then on Tuesday, I think they will tell him, we accept it, we're going to reinitiate the investigation, which is what they'll probably do. Or they can say, we reject that, we still think that you're the guilty guy, you should suffer that, and now we expel you. So it's a bit of a gamble for him. But the LDP is really in turmoil right now. Mr. Motegi, you might remember that there were 5 factions when this first started. Mr. Prime Minister Kishida said, I'm going to dissolve my own faction, the Kishida faction, and at the same time, the Abe faction was dissolved. They announced they would dissolve it. They didn't do it at that immediate time. The desks and the chairs were still in the same offices. They have since moved off of that. Mr. Nikai, who was also implicated very heavily, he decided, I'm going to resign. I'm not going to resign. I'm just not going to run in the next election. So I'm 88 years old, 89 years old. I'm not going to run in the next election. It's not much of a contrition on his part, but the fact that he said, I'm not going to run in the next election was enough for the prime minister to say, okay, I'm going to leave you alone. So there was a little bit of negotiation and horse trading going on there. Mr. Nikai got a soft shoe reprimand. He wasn't even mentioned, actually. His number 2, who was very influential, also got a pass. And the number 2 is vying for power in Taro Aso's election district as well. They have not contiguous, but they're very close in the same prefecture. And he got off scot-free when the prime minister had the option of meting out a punishment. He never even asked Taro Aso about this one individual that Taro Aso would love to see reprimanded so that his position increases. It didn't happen the way the deputy prime minister Taro Aso wanted it. And so this relationship between the prime minister and the deputy prime minister is very delicate. The relationship between the prime minister and Mr. Motegi was never very good. So Mr. Aso played a real critical central role. There was nobody in the Abe faction to represent them. So it was a three-legged stool that was managing the Japanese government and Japanese politics. That's all now up in the air. Mr. Motegi announced just this last week, I think on Thursday, that he was going to dissolve his own faction as well. He's going to close the office. They're going to have their own lunch on Thursdays, as they almost always do, and continue on not as a faction, but as a kind of a grouping. The only political faction that now exists is the Aso faction. He hasn't closed down his faction. He hasn't announced he's going to close down his faction. He's deputy prime minister. He's mad as hell at the prime minister. And he's got a bone to pick with him on a wide range of issues. So once again, getting back to the by-election, should the LDP lose all 3 of these seats, Mr. Aso is probably in the background, agitating for, this guy isn't the right guy for us. We should be doing something with somebody else. And if it doesn't work during the by-election or he closes down the House, Mr. Aso is going to be there. So it's a very delicate, very dicey time for the prime minister. So we're going to continue to watch that. With regard to how the rankings hold up with appreciation for the different political parties, let me see. The LDP has support of about 16% of the population says the LDP cabinet, the prime minister, 16% of the population support them. It looks pretty bad. It's been bad. It's not hasn't been worse than this for a long time. But similarly with the other parties, you've got to take it into context too. So the number 1 opposition party is the Constitutional Democratic Party. They have a support rate of 3.8%. The next party in the running is Komeito, who is in coalition with the LDP. They have a support figure of 3.6% of the Japanese population support Komeito, and they think that they're doing a good job and we should vote for them. Ishin, the party that's really kind of coming up and really rabble-dazzle in Osaka and surrounding prefectures, they come in at 3.5%. The Japanese Communist Party comes in at 1.6%. Reiwa at 1.2%. The Democratic Party of the People comes in at 0.7%. Sanseito is at 0.7% approval rating. Let me see, the Free Education Party that was set up by Mr. Maihata, you might remember he got into a fight with his political boss. They were sharing power within the Constitutional Democratic Party. He decided, screw this, I'm going to set up my own political party. He set up the Free Education for All Party. It has zero support. And the biggest component is 68.9%. 68.9% of the Japanese population support no political party. So this is potentially your swing vote. And much will depend on how they perceive things, how they appreciate what the prime minister has been doing at that particular point in time when they go into the election booth, so the voting booth. So a lot is left up to chance and to good luck. We're going to continue to follow that and report to you. The expo is exactly 1 year away. It will start on April 13th next year. It will go for 6 months and end on October 13th. Let me see, there are about 28 million visitors that are expected to show up there, 161 countries. You might remember that the foreign pavilions, this is the expo in Osaka that built this man-made island, Yume no Shima. There's a Yume no Shima in Tokyo. This is a different one. Yume no Shima, they've built this artificial island. This is where the gambling casino will also be built, very close to where the expo is. So the expo's there. It's got a huge circular wooden frame that surrounds the pavilion. 50 foreign countries were expected to build their own pavilion, to hire Japanese contractors to submit their plans. And those pavilions, depending on how they're constructed, might continue to exist even after the expo and be used for other purposes. But of the 50 that were expected, there are about 12 who have submitted plans. Not all of them have broken ground. They might just not even show up, or they might withdraw their commitment and lose their deposits. But it's still a little bit up in the air. They're 1 year away. If you haven't broken ground now, if you're not starting to construct your pavilion, I don't know. It's pretty dicey, given that the Noto Peninsula earthquake has sucked in a lot of the laborers and the mechanics and that sort of thing to the peninsula. They're getting above average wages for that, and so the number of people that are available to do the actual work in Osaka is diminished. So a lot is left to be seen. I know there are some people in the audience that are really keenly interested in what's going on with the expo and the impact on Ishin, but I'd like to push that off to the Q&A to see if we can address those more. We reported here that the Prime Minister was meeting with Joe Biden on the same day, on the 10th last week, as elections in South Korea. So this relationship between Japan and South Korea, it's been fraught with lots of difficulties. The Prime Minister has really exerted himself to build a relationship with President Yoon. He's in his second year in the 5-year term as president. And the elections yesterday, or let me see, they were on the 10th, really kind of took the wind out of his sails. So we don't know how long that relationship is going to be very vibrant. The opposition party came in and really won by a landslide, making Mr. Yoon essentially a lame duck for the next 3 years before his election needs to go again as president. And under this kind of a scenario, it's very difficult to imagine that a candidate, an existing incumbent, can succeed himself when the opposition party has such a strong hold on it. So his political party is the People Power Party. They have 108 seats. They lost about 12 of the 300-seat legislature. The Democratic Party zoomed up. They had 169. They have 165, and a coalition partner. So they've got a real stranglehold. 175 plus whatever the coalition partner brings in of 300 gives them huge political swing. So things that are going on in South Korea have an impact on what's going on here in Japan, but also it's the same kind of machinations. The political party needs to stay in. They need to have a dominant position, if not a majority. that the LDP has, if the prime minister decides to close down the House and all 650 plus members of the lower house need to go for election, it's not clear that the LDP will end up after that election at parity. In fact, most people say they will lose some seats. They can afford to lose some seats because their majority is pretty strong. Plus, they have Komeito, but it doesn't mean that they're going to have Komeito for the rest of their lifetime, and it doesn't mean that they're going to always be in a 50% position. So a lot can happen here. It's a huge gamble for the prime minister to close down the House. I don't know. We're not in quite in a good position to make a prediction there, but you should know about it, and you should know the dynamics of it too. Let me see. Where are we go? The election delicacy. Remember, we were talking about the Philippines and the United States Japan alliance and how important that is. The United States Coast Guard, we've talked quite a bit about the United States coming in more forcefully into the Japanese kind of spectrum of running a government and providing protection. So there's the SOFA agreement, the Status of Forces Agreement, that's been in place for a long time. And it dictates how the United States and Japan deal with each other on all of these issues for the bases, who can work on the base, who pays for what, that sort of thing, and what kind of rights the military has for flies, for flyovers, for oversight, for flying their airplanes, for deploying people, for people jumping out of air in parachutes and that sort of thing. And this is undergoing a revamp. We talked about perhaps the Central Command moving to Japan, this development there. But the United States has contributed some Coast Guard cutters to Vanuatu, the island nation in the Pacific, and in a very kind of a new development, the U.S. Coast Guard has boarded 12 Chinese fishing boats that were fishing in Vanuatu's exclusive economic zone. This is a long way away from Taiwan. This is a long way away from the Philippines. And the Coast Guard cutters, the Americans that were on those boats, boarded these Chinese ships and forced them to go back outside of the economic zone. It's obviously ignited a protest from China, but you can see this slow, methodical march going forward. And I think this is just a test of what's going to be happening. But, the Japanese government absorbed the Japanese Coast Guard into the maritime forces of the self-defense forces maybe 5 months ago. So we reported on that. So it's not just the Coast Guard in Japan that's being absorbed by the military. It's also the United States Coast Guard actually playing a kind of a military role in the South Pacific. So this is something to watch and something that really took my interest. I think that's about it for today. We can go into more in the Q&A, and I always appreciate that. And just before I sign off, Maya, I just want to tell everybody how much I appreciate them, encouraging you and I, Maya, to continue this show and to give us comments and feedback, and also to contribute on the Q&A portion. It really inspires me and keeps me really encouraged to show up every Sunday to give this briefing to you. So thank you very much. And I love it when you wash your cat and also when you don't come off mute.
Well, you cannot have your cake and eat it, right?
You can't have your cat and eat it too. That's true.
That's true, yeah. Okay, so thank you for the briefing. And thank you to everybody who stayed with us in Clubhouse, because it seems that the volume there is still low. But we are also on YouTube and LinkedIn. So please, if you are in Clubhouse, come up on stage and we can talk there. Or if you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, you can share your comments with us, and I'll read them out loud to Timothy so that he can give us his thoughts on them. And Timothy will start with. Oh, no, before that, I wanted to say that if you are on YouTube particularly, please give us a like and subscribe so that, the algorithm again will push this podcast, the recording later on to more people, so that more people will be able to see it. And well, diving into the questions here, we've got a couple of them. I'll go in the order of which we received them. So the first one is from Hiroko, and it is on LinkedIn. Hiroko talks, well, actually commented about the speech of PM Kishida in front of the Congress. So Hiroko's comment is, I have listened to PM Kishida's address at the joint meeting of Congress. It was well delivered, but I am not comfortable with what he said about US not being alone in their effort to maintain the international order. Quote, I am here to say that Japan is already standing shoulder to shoulder with the United States. End of quote. What does he exactly mean by that? More money? More involvement in conflicted areas? If so, it is not representing Japanese people's voice. Timothy, your
That
thought on this?
that's a great comment and a great observation. And this politics that we are in now, this dynamic international politics, especially with the United States. Yes, we're standing shoulder and shoulder to you. We want to be viewed as an equal. Um, he also told the Americans, "Why don't you embrace your position? Don't be, don't lack confidence in the role that you play. Be bold." So he was saying that, but also saying, we can support, we can play a bigger role, we can be a viable partner, and I think that's where we're going. I think whether whether it's Biden or Trump, Trump is more of an isolationist, but I think whether it's Trump or Biden, the United States is going to diminish its role. It's not going to be more of a policeman. It needs to rely more on its partners, and I think we've reached that level of political and military and technological development. I mean, even with ambassadors being posted into foreign countries, CBS closed their bureau office because I guess they figured out that you can get everything done by using Zoom and talking to people that you couldn't do before. And the reason why countries have had ambassadors is because they needed somebody to represent the head of state or the president or the king in foreign countries. And it is true that probably compared to those times, the communications are much more immediate. You can talk to the real principal on issues of importance. You don't have to rely on passing letters and confidential codes to the person who is on the ground. So there's a lot that's going on there. And I think this is a realignment that is probably way overdue. You probably caught that in a similar fashion. NASA is launching a mission to the moon, Armistice, the Armistice project, Armistice 1, 2, and 3. Armistice 2 will be a fly around the moon with four astronauts in 2025, and in 2026, Artemis 3 will go to the moon. There will be two Japanese astronauts there. There will be a rover, a pressurized rover that two astronauts can sit in and survive on the moon surface for about 30 hours. So they will be taking a great leap forward. This is a big deal. And I think similarly, the Japanese have decided or agreed that we will pay for the lion's share of that just so that we get these two guys. We want Japan in this race. We want Japan to be participating. And similarly, I think with Hiroko's comment, what gives? The prime minister is saying we're going to be, shoulder level partners with the United States. Who decided that? How did you decide that? And I think I think it's just the reality that Japan has emerged from 70 years after the Pacific War, and that the Constitution's Article 9 that restricts it from having offensive weapons is probably a legacy that needs to be addressed. Already, Japan is going full bore into a military industrial type complex. They need that industry, they need that revenue. And I think that's the direction they're going. And you're going to be seeing more and more of this. Already, the Japanese are producing armaments that are being used in the Ukraine, and also these Patriot missiles that they're building under contract and with licenses of the intellectual property. So there's a lot going on many different areas. But a great comment, a great observation. You're going to see a lot more of this coming up, I predict.
Yes, I think that's a great comment, and I also wonder whether there will be more resistance and well among the general public here, because definitely the generation that remembers the years immediately after the Second World War is gradually, decreasing, but still, their kids they still remember what their parents have told them
Yeah,
about that terrible time and so on. And I wonder because many people here in Japan they feel that. Through this upcoming militarization of the country, the development of the military industrial complex, and, with the tensions here in the region just going
yeah.
up, maybe there, do you expect? I think, I don't know, but probably it is normal to expect actually that there will be more resistance and more opposition among the general public towards these policies of the current government.
At the same time, though, you've got North Korea who is really launching more into hypersonic missile technology, into launching spy satellites. They have a program to launch 4 spy satellites. They haven't been successful yet. But this, like you said, this region, the real politics of this region is that Japan is going to be victimized unless they get their act together. And I think that's, the Japanese population might not like it, but I think the reality is that that's going to happen one way or the other. Excuse me. And what happens is, if the election for the lower house is yes, if it, in an election for the lower house, these issues will come to the surface because the opposition parties will say, "This is what you're doing in violation of the Constitution. We don't want that." And the people who feel that way, they might say, I was for the LDP, but now on this particular issue, I want to vote the other way." So elections really begin to crystallize these, and I think it's coming to that point. Maybe not in this next election, but certainly in the next one after that.
Right. And also, I think that there is quite a lot of, let's say, well, there are quite a lot of strong feelings here, and thoughts that basically, if Japan stays as it is, it's not going to be involved into a military conflict because neutrality pays off at the end of the day. And this is what I have heard. This is just, let's say, well, whatever conversations that I have heard from friends and acquaintances here in Japan, but people don't like to the country to be said that it's going to suffer and so on if this or that happens, because well, Japan has been at peace for 70 years, right? And it seems that the feeling is that if the country starts militarizing, then the neighbors will have a reason to actually perceive Japan as a threat and probably attack.
Okay, so one of the agreements that was made to
Mm,
during the Kishida trip was to move the Central Command for the Pacific forces here to Japan and
mhm,
assign a 4-star general. There are other agreements that say Japanese ports can now work on American warships to repair them, to revise them, to replenish them, and also the airplanes, the fighter airplanes. So what that does is it's this slow creep. Even before you notice it, these places become potential targets because they are facilitating perhaps a war effort or an incursion or a defensive measure, and they become a likely target in the event of real kinetic action. And I think by the time it comes to that, the Japanese people will say, well, now we have this neutrality. We're trying to be neutral. And the enemies of Japan will say, well, not really, because you've got these agreements with the United States. You're sharing technology. You're building missiles. You have offensive and strike capabilities. You're not neutral. You're very much a participant in this action. And I think that's the reality that we're going into, whether they want to or not. So they might as well pony up and say, yes, Article 9, we're going to throw that away because we are engaged in a very volatile region of the world. There is going to be at least some action by North Korea at some point in time, or China and Taiwan, and we just need to get our act together, and it requires everybody to pull their own weight. I think that's the direction we're going in.
well, thank you for the comments. And yes, we have also comments from Seiichiro Manabe-san. on LinkedIn saying yes. Well, these alliances and the one with the Philippines will be crucial to Japan's national security. And well, also we have another one about the Japanese policy, which is in Clubhouse from Kar Tugao. So he wrote, Japanese policy starts changing from 2015 with the law on right of collective self-defense,
Right.
and continued in 2022 with the enemy attackability.
Yep.
And now we have 43 trillion defense budget for 5 years. So things are escalating, if I can use the word here.
Whose comment is that?
That is Kar Tugao in
Yes.
Club. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a tremendous amount going on there. I think if we just had a podcast that focused just on the military, I think people's hair would catch on fire.
right. Okay, and then I'm moving back to the economy. Your comments, the comments you made earlier about the economy and the yen and the dollar.
Yep.
So we have another comment in Clubhouse, and it is from Cam. So Cam wrote, "I don't believe the BOG intervention will help in the near term, given last week's U.S.
Yep.
surprise inflation report growing, stemming the likelihood the U.S. will lower rates further this year."
That's
So
right. And you saw the yen just shoot up. I mean, in one
mhm,
week, it went from 152 to 153, almost breaching 154. It's just incredible. It was 151, what, 2, 3 weeks ago? It's
right.
just incredible the volatility that's going on there.
Mhm. It is incredible, yes. And
Thanks,
I
Sam.
think that, yeah, thank you. Okay. Then going back to now to YouTube, and there we have a question by Surya Bumantara. So the question is, do you think that US steel acquisition by Nippon Steel will disrupt Japan-US relations in the near future?
Depends on what you mean in the near future. Probably
Mhm.
the deal is going to go through, but it's just not the right timing right now. It's probably a deal that should happen. I think there's benefits for both sides. It's a very big deal. Steel is, it's a central industry for Japan and for the United States. The Japanese are, global leaders in specialty steel, and the steel industry in the United States could use the investment and could use the new technology. I think it's going to happen at some point in time, but neither Biden or Trump have really lobbied hard one way or the other. I think the timing is just a little bit too delicate.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. And we have Yuka with us. Yuka, good evening to you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, again, thank you. And thank you for not saying omatase shimashita. Because I don't know, again, I still don't know how to respond to that. But anyway,
Okay.
so, I'm sort of like hesitant to ask you this because everybody
Yuka,
is,
Yuka,
like,
Yuka, don't
oh,
wash the dishes while you're talking.
oh, sorry. How did you know? But anyway, okay. Yeah, it's actually dinner time. So, so everybody was focusing on the global politics, and I was sort of reading scandalous, reporting by Bunshun
Oh,
Yes,
uh, about the Miss Koike. You know what I'm gonna getting at. Excuse me. So, seems like this is not the first time, the issue on her like academic record is
mm,
maybe she might have falsified. And then, like, the first of all, I was thinking, why did she think that nobody will find out? But anyway, and then my question number two, why Cairo University? And why did she say that she graduated at the top of the class? And I understand this university is very hard to graduate from. But
mm.
anyway, my
yeah.
question is, if this is proven to be true, how much of a damage to her candidacy? To like a just sort of assuming she's gonna run for the prime ministership, is this a done deal, so there's no chance for her now, or what do you think? Thank you.
Um, Number one, I don't think she's going to run for prime minister. I don't think she's going to throw her hat in for Tokyo 15. I think she's going to go and support they've already identified who the candidate for Tokyo 15 will be, and he'll probably win. He has the endorsement of Ms. Koike already. The posters have already been published. So she's not going to play that gambit that we had kind of thought about, that it might shake up Japanese politics. It definitely would. I think she has a different plan. The issue about academic credentials, it's a pretty big deal. It's easily found out. Here in Japan, though, I mean, if you're trying to assess if somebody actually graduated from Todai, it's a lot more difficult to do here in Japan than it is in the United States or in Cairo University. But the fact is, she did go to Cairo, and I don't think she graduated at the top of her class. But yeah, literary license in a resume is really not allowed. You're not supposed to pack your resume like that, and especially if you become a prominent person, it comes out in the wash, even if you did it maybe 12 or 15 years ago. And I think that's the case with Miss Koike. But you've always got people that are trying to pull these kinds of people down. They look for anything that they can, anything will do, and I think she's just become a victim of that. But beyond that, I don't want to comment too much. She is a powerful political figure. She is a brilliant tactician. She knows Japanese politics. She knows how to play the game. She's not going anywhere. She's still, I don't think she's even 70 years old. She might be 70, but she's still very active. She's got a lot of wind in her sails, and she's somebody that to contend with. Bunshun does have its ways of diminishing people and destroying careers. It was probably proposed to her that we can release this, or you can do something that we want you to do that you don't want to do, or we're going to publish this report. And probably she just poked them in the eye and said, give it your best shot. I think that's a little bit more of what's going on in the background.
Okay, so I know it's the deal is that this statute of limitation is gonna to play out. So she's not gonna be found guilty of any charges. But I thought they meant reputation. But can I read this? Maya, the Gabon's interesting comment.
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
It's easy to buy university diploma in Egypt, and Koike worked there as a tourist guide. Interesting. Thank you. I didn't know that.
I didn't know. I knew that, but I don't think how it actually, how her working as tour guide in Egypt immediately means that she might have bought the diploma. The question is, do we have any proof of that she has bought her diploma? So, and I don't think that we have seen any proof, black and white, with things like that. So I don't know. It's really
I know. I'm sorry. I'm not accusing you for accusing
no, that's
anybody.
okay.
But I'm just saying, this was an interesting, information. I'm not saying that she bought or not.
Right.
But
right.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the interesting piece of information.
Yuka, I'm commenting to the comment of Gabor,
okay.
not to you
right.
reading it out.
Oh, no, I know. Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
I know. Thank you. Yeah. Right.
Well, okay. The thing about statute of limitations, in the area of public opinion, there is no statute of limitations. So if you can paint somebody's reputation evilly, that sticks, and when it sticks forever. So the fact that she was a tour guide, I don't know how evil that is. You could probably look at my background and say, oh yeah, he says he graduated from the University of Tohoku, and he got a law degree, but he also was a teacher of English. Yeah, that's kind of true, but what's the purpose? Why are you trying to bring these things up and insinuate these things, that you're an English teacher and therefore what are you doing going to law school? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But people can say that about Yuka. You're living in the United States and you're washing dishes. What the hell?
I know. I'm very good at dishwashing. So that's a dishwashing school at the top. So
So Bunshun is really good at this. They're good at extracting concessions and payments, and that's where they deal in kind of generating public interest. And sometimes they're spot on, and sometimes they're just a little bit off base, but that's why they don't get all the credibility that you think that they might get. But that's because they're a rag. They're not a central, mouthpiece of the government, for God's sake, no. But that's great. But it also means that they fly a little bit loose and a little bit under the radar. Also, I encourage everybody to pick up Bunshun, because it is it's a finger on the pulse of what's going on.
Yes, indeed. And what you cannot read in the mainstream media as
For
well.
sure. Yeah.
Yes. The question though is, I always wonder about it, how much credibility is there behind, the statements and the articles that Bunshun pushes out, right? So,
Oh, okay. They get sued from time to time for
mhm,
being loose with the facts. And also, if you read them, the writing, it's a weekly, right? And sometimes these stories are published very quickly, so the writing is a little bit. It's sometimes it's not as clear as
mhm,
crisp as one of the the big publishing houses or the newspapers would do, but they're flying really fast, and
right.
they almost always call the person who is the target, and they say, "We're working on a story. Would you like to comment?" And then there might be a comment. There might be, go to hell and hang up the phone. But before
Mhm.
they publish the story, they always call up and they say, "One more time, we're getting ready to publish this. We're not going to give you a review of the entire article, but is there anything you want to say about this?" Opening the door for some kind of negotiation. And sometimes you can. Sometimes you can say, "Look, this is devastating to me. It's untrue. I will sue you, but I'll buy 6,000 copies of Bunshun, and here's the money for that. Could you please withdraw?"
Wow. I usually refrain from using labels and so on, but it sounds kind of, like blackmailing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They get criticized for that. Um,
Mm,
but it's like in Japan. There is an area for that type of business. There's an area in Japanese society. It plays a necessary role, even for the gangsters, even for that level, for the black market, for the under the economy kind of
mhm.
currency exchanges that are going on. There is it's a very rich and complex culture, and so there is that area where if you delve into that and you
Oh, Timothy, I think I lost you. What happened? Huh. Okay, so Timothy is probably talking into the camera and the microphone without realizing that we cannot hear him.
Okay, maybe should I sing? I was kidding.
No, you can chime in,
No,
Yuka.
nobody wanna. Yeah, I was just thinking when you were talking about this Bunshin, and then don't you think it's a very tough job to have to be a Bunshin journalist?
Well, I think it is, and the thing is that well, there is a risk there as well, I believe. But maybe you have listened to one of our podcasts last year with Lori Vesselhoff. And what happened there was that basically she explained the dynamics of how news is distributed, how it is, broadcast here in Japan. And as Timothy mentioned earlier, yes, the dynamics of news distribution here in Japan at the moment does allow for that niche in which Shinbonis and also Shincho and maybe one or two other outlets are, because of the Kisha Club, Kisha Kurabo, I think they
Hmm.
call it,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
so on. Yeah, but it is risky, of course it is. But I believe also that if you work for that outlet, basically you're not liable as an individual, but the outlet itself can be sued. And I don't know whether this is 100% true, whether the people who feel that they have been wronged and the news or the articles published there are not true, whether they can sue the individuals, the individual journalists or not. Yes,
Right.
that's
Actually, for this case, I mean, I again, after
no. Go
I'm
ahead.
getting
Go
my echo
ahead.
back. No, yeah, like Timothy said, nobody sort of checked her background. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
so.
Right.
responsibility is not only with her, but
well,
yeah.
yeah.
So he's not coming back yet.
I think what happened, I remember Timothy mentioning that his computer battery was not full. And I imagine that he's currently trying to switch from his computer to his iPhone, and probably will join us as soon as he's able to do that. In the meantime, while waiting, let's see, Gabor, yes, your comment here. Yes, so difficult to feel any sympathy for Koike. She has destroyed so many people and parties around her during her career ruthlessly. She is indeed a talented Machiavellian tactician who has a special talent to read the trends. Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Gabor, I invite you to come up on stage if you can, if you are in an environment that allows you to do that.
But that's what the politician will do, right?
Right, that's what politics
That's
is
why
about.
I'm not a politician, because I cannot read the trends.
Yeah, I think that
I cannot read the air.
right. Basically, oh, here we've got Timothy. He's back.
Oh, good. Okay, all right. So
okay, but no, what I wanted to say is that in politics, right? We know that in politics, every politician who has been able to keep on top. We can say the same thing about Mr. Abe. We can say the same about Mr. Kishida. What Gabor you just said about Koike, that in order to to preserve their positions and maintain those positions, they have been ruthless at this time or another. Timothy, I cannot see on screen. I can hear a lot of
I'm trying to fix things. Can you
okay.
hear me?
Well, we can. Oh, whew, that was a lot of noise. Okay, so Timothy, please try to, yes, I don't know, get into the car and broadcast from there. Now I can have my back on you. Yoo-hoo! So for all the cat jokes,
yeah. Please do.
right? Yeah. Okay. So let's see how it is. And yeah, Gabor, I cannot see. No, you're still in the audience there. But then
maybe he's in the area that I cannot talk.
Maybe even noisier than the area in which Timothy is at the moment.
So where's Timothy now?
I think that he is in Chiba, maybe Katsuyama, the port of Katsuyama.
Okay.
I guess. And
no, okay. I think he's raising.
Okay, yes, Gabor is here. Okay, nice. While we are waiting for Timothy to chime in again. By the way, Timothy, I muted you because there was a lot of background noise there. And we'll continue the discussion waiting for you. Please.
Oh, Timothy's back in the club. Oh, no, he disappeared. I saw him in the audience in the clubhouse, but he did.
Okay, let's see how it goes then. Gabor, thank you for coming up.
Gabor, you're on mute.
Okay. Let's see what is going on. Gabor, I cannot help you actually. I cannot unmute you here, so you have to do this by yourself. Oh, Timothy is here. Yoo-hoo! Right.
So maybe we can invite him up.
I did. Okay.
Oh, okay, good. All right, good, great. Okay, welcome back, Timothy.
Sorry, my phone is sometimes the sound goes off.
Okay.
So
right.
I parallelly watch YouTube and on what's this called? Clubhouse.
Okay, good. Timothy.
So
yes.
I have two streams at the same time.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And yes, Timothy joined us in Clubhouse. You can hear him through my microphone in the live stream if he unmutes himself. Sorry. Timothy, you're muted in Clubhouse, by the way. Waiting. Okay. Here we go. We cannot hear you very well. Maybe your phone settings are not allowed.
Timothy, increase the volume. Just kidding.
No, you shouldn't be kidding. We can see him, yeah, but not there. Okay. All right, so it looks like there are some technical difficulties there indeed. And what we can do is that, well, maybe wait for another 30 seconds. And if we cannot fix those issues, we will say goodbye to everybody and then, well, come back again next week, continue the conversation and the discussion. Gabor, maybe Timothy can hear you. So just before we close, could you please let me know or let us know your thoughts about Miss Koike, maybe Miss Koike and other politicians, because you follow Japanese politics very closely too. Let me your thoughts about Miss Koike, maybe and other politicians, because you follow Japanese politics very closely too. Let me. Whew.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. Okay, go ahead.
On Clubhouse, I can barely hear anybody. I don't know if it's the issue with my phone or
once again,
the application.
I think this is the application because I have tried everything possible, and I have used all the help from Mario and other people, to change the settings there. But that's it.
So I'll just quick. I wanted to mention because I've been in Japan for long, and she's been in position and a centerpiece of Japanese politics for long. So I've been following Koike. I'm not a big fan of her, like a huge chunk of the population. But she's been rumored to maybe she can become the first female prime minister of Japan. Just as Timothy, I doubt it. But she always floats the idea, keep everybody in doubt what her next move can be. And when there's any chance to get back to national politics, she always hints or floats or lets a rumor that she might want to come back. I think the LDP should be at a much more disastrous, hopeless position to reach to Koike, who left the LDP before and stabbed the LDP, stabbed Abe, stabbed a lot of people in the back before. So if she had ever returned to LDP, I wouldn't expect a big applause welcoming her back. And but the idea of having a female prime minister is always floated because Japan has never had a female prime minister. That's why Kamikawa's name comes up very often.
Right.
Koike is one of the Koizumi children. So she was brought to LDP as a young female talent when Koizumi kicked out the postal rebels. You remember in the early 2000s, there was a huge division in the LDP about the privatizing the postal service.
Yeah.
The Japan Post.
Yes.
And Koizumi, who was a vagabond, extraordinary leader of the LDP, actually campaigned to become the leader of the LDP by destroying the LDP. He brought in a lot of so-called Koizumi children, including Koike. Koike became minister, and she was a rising star. As far as I know, she lied about her diploma, but it was handled very well. Nobody really cared. When she was pressed before the previous governor election, she showed the proof. It was a paper issued by the Egyptian embassy here.
Okay.
And of course, the Egyptian embassy helped Koike to get through the allegations. because she has strong connection to the country, and it's important for Egypt because she lived there and she spent time there. And according to her CV, she graduated from the Cairo University.
Well, but she also speaks Arabic. That's what we have heard, right?
What Timothy said, very unlikely she would come back to national politics. I mean, Tokyo 15 by-election would give a good chance, an opening, but I doubt.
Right. Well, I don't know.
She gets back. I'm sure she's bored with being a governor. She wants more. She has a appetite. She's a real power-hungry politician. But I doubt she has a chance to be a national leader.
Okay, we'll see, Gabor.
And I stopped talking. I'm very talkative, so sorry.
No, that's okay. We'll see.
Maybe Timothy is back with us, and I don't know.
You are on, Timothy. Oh, yes, you are on. And no, Gabor, I think that, being talkative is not a bad thing. So, Timothy, to you, you're on, your mic is unmuted, but we cannot hear you at all in Clubhouse, okay? And you're also on StreamYard. On StreamYard, I cannot see you at all.
Am I the only one who can hear anything? Anybody? Hello, anybody? Everybody?
So maybe, okay. I think that
Timothy
we're still
is off mute, but I cannot hear.
No, I cannot hear him at all either.
Maya?
How about? Oh,
maybe.
Oh, sorry, Yuka.
Well.
Okay. Anyway, it seems that we have issues.
I could hear you now.
You can hear me now. Okay. It seems that we have issues. I cannot get in touch with Timothy at the moment because, Timothy, your mic is off muted. You are basically on, but we cannot hear you. Also, during the live stream, I cannot see you on screen there. And I think that I have lost any, what's that? I have lost your voice, your image, everything. And with this, I think that probably it's better to just let people go today, and we can come back together, next week at 8:20, next Sunday, right, at 8:20, and continue the discussion. So thank you very much, everybody. And I apologize for these glitches. Hopefully we'll be much, much better next week. That's it. So to everybody, have a great day and, a bright new week.
Thank you.
Thank you. A bright new week.